Number 10. Mockingbird. This wasn't a weird pairing because it was so much really bad or anything, it was just more weird because it was pretty random. Although these two had some fun moments, most fans felt that there just wasn't much staying power between them. Also, Spider-Man is a major jokester, and Mockingbird seemed to actively dislike laughing at Peter's jokes. She's pretty no nonsense. The nice thing is that Peter didn't have to worry about Bobby when it came to her being strong, independent, and being able to take on any baddies who might come her way because of her attachment to Spider-Man. In the end, however, everyone kind of felt the relationship was more of a placeholder, something for now but not for forever, as these two both had much more memorable and well-suited pairings when it came to the world of comics matchmaking. And there's also that weird thing of, they don't really have much in common besides their work, so there's that. Number 9. Mary Jane Watson. I know, how could Mary Jane make the list again, you might wonder? You're like, Amanda, really? Mary Jane? Which Spider-Man is she paired with now that's so weird, you wonder? Well, once again, I am not talking about her relationship with Peter Parker, although if we really wanted to explore some of their alternate relationships from alternate Earths and some specific moments in their relationship, there are a few times that even those two have been weird together. But no, this time around we are talking about Mary Jane Watson and Spider-Woman Jessica Drew. When did this happen? Where did this happen? In the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. The two weren't ever officially together, but Jessica definitely had feelings for MJ as she shared the memories, thoughts, and emotions even of Peter Parker, who she was a clone of. Yeah, in Ultimates, Jessica Drew has a different origin story, and like Ben or Kane are on Earth 616, she herself is also a clone of Peter, just a female clone, who was created by Dr. Kurt Connors and Dr. Otto Octavius for the CIA and FBI. The weird thing was less that Jessica was attracted to MJ, and more that she was attracted to her because of Peter's memories. None of her memories were her own, because that's how cloning works in this reality apparently. And before we move on to our next spot, just a quick reminder to give this video a thumbs up if you haven't already and if you're enjoying it. Because yeah, weird things deserve likes, I think. Number 8. Carlie Cooper. Carlie ended up basically hating Spider-Man after being in a relationship with him, which was pretty unfortunate considering that she was a fan favorite when it came to her relationship with Peter. Carlie was very patient with Peter initially and didn't even seem to mind when Peter would kinda zone out when they were together and not even notice when she left a gathering early, which is pretty awkward. She worked as a forensic specialist for the New York Police Department, so they seemed like a logical match. Both were brainy and involved in the fight for justice. However, when Peter Parker revealed that he was Spider-Man, Carlie found herself unable to continue their relationship, and the two broke up. However, Carlie would still be haunted by this revelation and secret, which she fought very hard to protect. It eventually caused her to move away from New York for a time after a traumatic event where she found herself exposed to the Goblin formula and transformed, being given the name Monster and recruited into the Goblin King's Goblin Army. Carlie was later cured, but this experience would definitely stay with her. Number 7. Ultimate Katie Bishop. This weird romance belongs to the Spider-Man known as Miles Morales. What's the deal with this relationship? Well, in the Ultimate Universe of 1610, Kate Bishop is not like the one we have in Earth 616. She isn't Hawkeye's apprentice, nor does she become Hawkeye in this reality. Instead, we learn she is dating Miles Morales and is just a normal student. Or so it seems. In reality, her parents are Hydra agents who sedate Miles when he visits and then kidnap him and experiment on him, alongside Dr. Doom. Ultimate Dr. Doom. Fortunately, he does manage to escape and of course decides to break up with Katie before leaving. Gotta love those extreme ultimate romances. So weird. I also like that Miles was like, yeah, so you guys kidnapped me and experimented on me, so I think I'm just gonna break up? I think I'm just gonna break up with you, but this was weird. Thanks. It's like a weird way to end your relationship. Number 6. Jackpot. With Jackpot, it's all pretty confusing because we have Sarah Earhart, the real superpowered Jackpot, and Alana Jobson, who is posing as Jackpot and uses drugs to give herself powers so she can become a hero. Here we are mostly talking about Alana Jobson. Alana Jobson, who is posing as Jackpot. While Alana herself is implied as being attracted to Sarah, when posing as Jackpot and fighting alongside Spider-Man, he initially thinks that she might be his ex-girlfriend Mary Jane. The two of them have a few flirty moments while fighting together. Jackpot even calls him Tiger, considering the name of her character is obviously meant to be a play on Mary Jane's famous catchphrase, "You just hit the jackpot, Tiger." This is also what compels Spider-Man to want to learn more about the new superhero. In reality, Alana Jobson is paying Sarah to use lose her superhero identity and registration papers. Because she just really wants to be a hero. She ends up dying as a result of this desire when the superpower-inducing drugs and hormones she uses together end up killing her when mixed with a blindness serum, despite Spider-Man successfully giving her the antidote to said serum. This romance never really goes anywhere, it just ends in tragedy. Number 6. Emma Frost. This one is pretty strange, but it's also coming at us from an alternate reality, so you know, you kinda just gotta go with it. I think what really shocked me about it though is that Kitty Pryde and Peter Parker were also known to date in the Ultimate Universe, and so I've always kind of thought of Kitty as being, you know, quite younger than Emma, and that was the thing that made me go like, wait, what? So how old? What's happening? So I was just confused in general by that logic, although this is comics, so while in some realities characters may have a greater age gap, in others they may actually be the exact same age, closing that gap completely. And in this comic, that is what is happening. In Marvel Adventures Spider-Man, which takes place in the alternate reality of Earth 20051, both Emma Frost and her BFF Shazam Duval had a crush on Spidey, and Emma Frost is the same age as him here, so it's not weird. It's a little weird, but it's not weird. Emma, being a telepath, used her powers to uncover his secret identity, and she causes a bit of trouble when Chad and Peter start dating. Eventually, her trickery, however, is exposed, and she's forced to face the consequences of her actions. Here, Emma Frost is known by the codename Silencer, and ends up becoming an ally to both Chad and Spider-Man later on. Number 4. Black Widow. The strange thing is, while this happened in Marvel Team Up issue number 82 as a quick little thing, when Black Widow loses her memory temporarily, it also has been a comic ship in an alternate world where there is an amalgam alternate version of Black Widow who is basically a blend of both Black Widow and Black Cat, which yes, is one of the coolest alternates for both Black Cat and Black Widow. I know, it's pretty great. The issue where these two, however, initially hook up comes to us from way back before that. How it ends up happening is Spider-Man saves the day for Black Widow, who at the time believes she is a school teacher named Nancy Rushman. The other weird thing is that Natasha has also lost her memories of who she is, but has managed to retain her fighting know-how, and also assists Spider-Man with apprehending criminals, not thinking that it is weird at all for her to be doing. But, you know, I guess the fighting know-how maybe is in her physical memory? I don't know how that all works, but brains, stuff, wiring. Physical memory? Spider-Man recognizes her and recognizes that her being enamored with him is admittedly pretty weird, as is the fact that she thinks she's a woman named Nancy Rushman when she's not. Once her memories are back, Black Widow is over the flirtation and basically just dips at the end of the issue. She's like, this was cool, but also not into you. Bye. Only me as Nancy Rushman was into you, Spider-Man, sorry about that. Number 3. Louise Kennedy. The story of Louise Kennedy comes with a pretty powerful moral. Never date Kane Parker. Louise was a cop in Salt Lake City who had turned dirty and was on the criminal drug lord Vincent Tannen's payroll. She and Kane shared a night of passion, and both had feelings for the other. Both became this light in the darkness for one another, this hope that they could be redeemed or saved or become better. After Kane found out about Louise's betrayal, however, he ended up being forced to confront her and eventually killed her as a result. After snapping her neck, he left his mark on her, burning her face with the mark of Kane, shocking Ben Reilly, who was actually there to witness all of this, and whom he'd actually saved in killing Louise. It's a very terrible end to a relationship. Let me just burn your face after you're already dead. Number 1. Jessica Carradine. Remember that time Ben Reilly pined after the daughter of the man who murdered Uncle Ben? No? Well, take a seat, cause yeah, that happened. Jessica Carradine is the daughter of Dennis Carradine, the name that would later be given to the man who killed Peter Parker's Uncle Ben. She grew up with a hatred of Spider-Man, believing that the hero was actually to blame for the death of both Ben and her father. She believed that her dad was basically framed by Spidey. Needless to say, she and Ben's relationship is catastrophically ruined when she realizes that he is Spider-Man. I don't even know why Ben would go for this if he was aware of Jessica's name and her ties to the man who murdered Uncle Ben, but hey, I guess it wasn't technically his uncle since he's just Peter's clone. One of Peter's clones. It should be noted that Jessica did eventually come to terms with the fact that her father was actually the guilty party, but she still couldn't be with Ben because she was then just too worried for his safety, since he often puts himself in various dangerous situations as Spidey.
Starting us off in at number 10, Carol Danvers. No one really wanted Peter Parker and Carol Danvers to be a thing, but that's still what we got. And in Miss Marvel Volume 2, issue 34, Peter asks Carol out, which she said yes to since he had helped her when she was depowered. Tad forceful of him. Then in issue 47 of her solo series, the two of them actually went out on a date at an upscale restaurant, and it is pretty painful to watch, until the date is interrupted by supervillains, thank god. The pair take them out, then end up eating chili dogs on a roof that overlooks the city. Later, it would continue to get weird between the two of them when they teamed up to fight Mac Gargan's Venom. But quite frankly, we're really glad this relationship never really hit the ground running. It's definitely one we can do without. In at number 9, Rogue. In the world of X-Men Forever, which takes place on Earth 161, we got to see a romance blossom between Spider-Man and Rogue. This Rogue had absorbed Nightcrawler's powers, which also changed her to look a lot more like him physically, which did not bode well with her. After that went down, she found herself crossing paths with Spider-Man after dealing with a robbery in New York. Feeling a little lost, she decided to spend the night with him, accompanying him on his patrol, which led to sparks between the two. They actually almost kissed, and would've if it wasn't for being interrupted by the screams of a nearby Jean Grey. Up next, number 8, Spider-Gwen. Okay, so I know we said we wouldn't be talking about alternates of Gwen Stacy with Peter Parker, but this alternate of Gwen had her sights set on a different man in the Spider-Man mantle. We're talking Miles Morales. Spider-Gwen is the Gwen Stacy aka Spider-Woman of Earth 65. Now under the Marvel Now line, she and Miles would get romantically involved with one another. And side note, their Earth 8 alternates even got married. They starred in a story titled Sitting in a Tree, in which their two titles crossed over and made for a story that had our hearts pitter-pattering all the way through. I mean, how could you not ship them? They're so cute together. I mean, unless you're actually one of those people who shipped Miles and Kamala Khan, in which case I am very sorry for your loss.
Number 7, Elizabeth Tyne. Elizabeth Tyne was initially introduced by the name Janine Godby, which was an alias that she assumed to escape her past. The weird thing about this relationship wasn't so much how it unfolded, though being in a relationship with any clone of a superhero is always going to be weird, but more in how it started, and in Elizabeth's resemblance to another major love interest from Spider-Man comics, Mary Jane Watson. I specifically just want to focus on the weird interactions in the beginning of this relationship though, although it is weird that, you know, Ben Reilly's a clone and then Janine/Elizabeth just happens to resemble Mary Jane. That's pretty weird. Ben Reilly approached Janine initially and upon their first meeting was taken with her, asking her out in the most bizarre and kind of strangely movie-esque way. He's like, look, I know this is going to sound like a line, but well, I'm new in town. I know that's lame, but I swear it's true. It's just lame that you're using it as a line, Ben. So I'm new in town, and well, I was wondering if maybe we could have, I don't know, dinner tonight? And initially Janine just turns him down, and I think we can see why from that thing that he just said, which is a lot. I feel like Ben also got Peter's awkward charm as well in the cloning process. However, because it is charm, even though it is awkward, Janine immediately changes her mind because, yeah, awkward charm. Ben never makes it to their date, however, because hero stuff, but does run into Janine and apologizes and asks if they can try again. Now, she initially says no once more, and I actually love this like one series of panels so much. I wish that they had just left it there because it's really funny, but she actually adds like right after that he can take her to lunch right now. How spontaneous and romantic and kind of presumptuous, but okay. I also like that he's just like, alright, great, I wasn't doing anything. It's like that's if that were me, I'd probably be like, well, maybe not now, but like maybe in a bit. Number 5, Debra Whitman. This is an interesting relationship considering it was very one-sided. Debra Whitman was a secretary at Empire State University where Peter was a student. She pined after Peter, and although at times it seemed like Peter didn't even notice her existence, the two started dating. Needless to say, they didn't make for a great partnership due to the fact that Peter kept having to bail on their dates to attend to heroic business as Spider-Man, but didn't really want to confide in Debra, so he just gave her a ton of really lame excuses. Eventually, the two broke up, but Debra remained obsessed with him and began to fantasize and hallucinate that he was Spider-Man, in essence making the ultimate excuse for his behavior while also idolizing him. When her therapist approached Peter after learning of this and asked him to wear a Spider-Man suit to help shock her out of her fantasy, he refused to do so, which obviously the therapist was like, well, that's weird, but okay. Debra, becoming delusional, later ended up in a toxic relationship as a result of all of this, making excuses for her then husband. Fortunately, Peter did eventually confess to her that he was Spider-Man, which helped Debra to move forward and woke her to the truth of her current relationship, motivating her to get a divorce. Thank goodness. Still pretty crazy. Number 4. Mary Jane Watson. Again. Another weird Spidey pairing with Mary Jane also comes to us from The Ultimates, because Spider-Man's clones all had his memories. They were just all basically into MJ. And not just Jessica. All the clones were meant to have their memories wiped so that they could develop their own identities and also be used in the process, but they escaped the facility where they were kept before this could happen. As a result, Kane, who also here sports an even creepier version of his half-melted face, ends up trapping Mary Jane and kidnapping her, claiming it's all out of love for her. Oh, if someone does that to you, you just need to get out of there. Seriously. Which is what MJ tries to do. She's like, no, let me out! Initially, she thinks that he's Peter from a silhouette, but then when she sees his face, she's horrified and knows something is definitely wrong, and this probably isn't her Peter Parker. Of course, she is right. Kane, out of love for MJ, wants to protect her by making her stronger. To do this, he exposes her to the Oz formula, which ends up turning her into a big red monster temporarily. I bet you thought I was gonna say a big red dog, but no, that's Clifford. Fortunately, the real Peter Parker shows up and is able to use his presence to calm MJ down, transforming her back into a normal teenage girl. Well, normal. I mean, I feel like she just went through some stuff and she might transform again, but sort of normal. Mostly normal.
And at number 2, Silver Sable. A sometimes antagonist, sometimes ally of Spider-Man's, Silver Sable, who was introduced in 1985's The Amazing Spider-Man issue 265, has never hooked up romantically with Peter in the 616, but there's certainly been lots of tension and flirtation to say the least. But we did get to see a glimpse of what that underlying sexual tension could amount to in What If Volume 2 issue 21, which was titled, What If Spider-Man Had Married the Black Cat? Now in this story, Black Cat is accidentally murdered by Paladin, and Spider-Man ends up getting romantically involved with Silver Sable in the aftermath. They both bond over the grief they share of their dead loved ones. By the end, it is a bit ambiguous as to whether or not their relationship worked out in the long run. And last but not least, speaking of, we have Black Cat at number 1. Black Cat, aka Felicia Hardy, may have originally been a villain of Spider-Man's, now an anti-hero, but if anything, her criminality made the romantic relationship between her and Peter Parker that much more steamier. Created by Marv Wolfman and Keith Pollard in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 194, Felicia actually chose to become more of an anti-hero because of her relationship with Spider-Man, even becoming his partner for a while. Although, she didn't care much for Peter Parker the civilian. She was way more into Spider-Man the vigilante, and one of the reasons why the two would split up was because of this. Now they've had an on-again, off-again relationship over the years, with Black Cat working as one of Spidey's biggest allies at their best, and her slipping back into the life of a criminal when they've been at their worst. Although that relationship between the two of them may have been tipped permanently into negative land, thanks to Otto Octavius running around in Peter's body as the superior Spider-Man, having broken Black Cat's teeth and abandoned her for the police to pick up. Definitely something that would make someone not want to be into you. Just saying.
Number 10. Spider-Man. While Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman and Peter Parker's Spider-Man aren't really a match made in heaven in any regards. In fact, at times Jessica finds Peter kinda grating and Peter finds Jessica a bit too intense. Jessica Drew hasn't been the only one to take up the Spider-Woman mantle. For a time, while her powers were inconsistent, after having been lost, returned, and then stolen and slowly recovering them over time, she actually bequeathed the name to another superpowered young woman, Maddie Franklin. Maddie became known for a time as Spider-Woman in Jessica's stead after being granted superpowers of her own. She also ended up becoming enamored with one Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. At one point, Spider-Man gives Maddie his Spider-Woman CPR, and she uses the opportunity to kiss him. This was during a time when Mary Jane was MIA and believed dead. In fact, that's like the previous issue to this kiss. However, despite MJ possibly being dead, Peter felt super uncomfortable with the romance and ultimately rejected Spider-Woman, even going so far as to have her memory wiped when it came to the truth of his secret identity. He felt that the age difference between them was too great, and also that his secret was too big a burden for someone so young to carry. Plus, he wasn't convinced that Mary Jane was truly dead, holding out hope that she was alive and would somehow be saved in return. Turned out he was right, by the way, that did end up happening. Still, that rejection of young Maddie was pretty harsh. Memory wiped? Woo, ouch. I know she's young, but geez, that would mess me up. I mean, I guess you won't remember it because your mind was wiped, so there's that. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about more Spider-Woman love interests or just Spidey love interests in general, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9, Morlun. Okay, so really this isn't Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman specifically, but it definitely looked like her. On Loomworld, Jessica Drew's doppelganger was actually a lover of the inheritor and villain Morlun. As such, this odd coincidence actually allowed Jessica Drew to infiltrate Loomworld to get valuable intel on the Inheritors and the Master Weaver. This intel would help the Spider Army to defeat the Inheritors and save the day, making the fact that she was forced to kiss Morlun worth it, I'm sure. I mean, at least I hope it was worth it. Oddly enough, although Jessica was not great at going undercover as her doppelganger, who by all regards was pretty much a big jerky jerk on this world, she still managed to get what she needed, utilizing her pheromones to distract from inconsistencies and prove that all in all, Spider-Woman is actually a really great spy, even when she has no plan and is kind of flying by the seat of her pants. Improvisational spy times. Number 8, David Ashima. David was Jessica Drew aka Spider-Woman's landlord when she was living in San Francisco with her good friend Lindsay McCabe. I love Lindsay. I'm so glad that she's returned in the comics. David and Jessica hit it off and began dating. However, the relationship didn't last as eventually David Ashima discovered that Jessica Drew was secretly Spider-Woman, also known in San Fran as the Dark Angel of San Francisco. This was all too much for David, and the two ended up calling it quits on their relationship. However, it should be noted that this whole ordeal would not stop David from later asking out Kitty Pryde when some of the X-Men came to visit Jessica. Number 7, Shroud. Shroud was the love interest of Julia Carpenter's Spider-Woman. While this Spider-Woman was also married at one point, her husband and her ended up getting divorced, with him getting custody of their daughter, Rachel, due to Julia's unexplained absences as a result of her secret life as the hero, Spider-Woman. The Shroud and Spider-Woman would fall in love when he helped her after she had lost her powers. It was Shroud who helped restore them and also helped Julia to recover from being paralyzed with physical therapy. Unfortunately, the romance wouldn't last, but even after they broke up, the Shroud refused to let Julia go and began stalking her in an attempt to get back together with her because he believed it would help him, fix his life. Yeah, that didn't end well. Julia was like, don't stalk me. Stop that. I'm gonna lay a trap for you. Number 6, Captain Marvel. Carol is really just Jessica Drew's best friend forever, but despite them being the facts, there are still a ton of people who ship these two together as well, as more than friends. The chemistry between Jessica Drew and Carol Danvers is really great, which is what makes it easy to accept that they are the best of friends, but some see that there could be more to these two than just a very close friendship. And I cannot deny myself, if either of these women decided that they wanted to date women, you know, they would actually be seemingly pretty perfectly matched for each other. There are times when Carol and Jessica in the comics even sound like an old bickering married couple, and then there are other times where they're so kind, considerate, loving, and loyal to each other that you could believe that they were like divine soulmates. So although this is a ship that isn't completely real or anything, I gotta say, I kinda like it. I kinda like it as a ship, which is why I included it. So if you ship those two as more than friends, that's alright. I stand by it. Put it in your fanfics. Number 5, Jerry Hunt. Jerry Hunt was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. who stumbled upon Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman when she was using her powers as a thief, just trying to survive and get by. Or well, she tried to be a thief briefly and then she was like, actually I shouldn't do this. I'll just be a hero instead, even though that doesn't pay anything. Oh boy, how am I gonna eat food? Coming across her path, Jerry managed to unmask Spider-Woman and found her appearance to be familiar. After he was injured, Jessica saved his life, and as he lay recovering at the end of that very first issue of Spider-Woman from the 1970s, he claimed that for whatever reason, he wanted that woman. He wasn't sure if he wanted to catch her or he wanted to love her, but boy oh boy did he want her. Jerry would later recall where he'd seen Jessica before in S.H.I.E.L.D. files where he saw her back in her Hydra days. Eventually, Jerry would end up finding Spider-Woman again, and for a time the two would even date. Jerry would also become an ally to Spider-Woman, helping her fight against villains and even trying to help her learn more about her own mysterious past. In the end, they would decide to break up when Jerry had to go back to London for work. Jess, you see, would rather stay put, and so that was the end of their romance. Number 4, Norman Osborn. For the daughter of Spider-Man, Spider-Woman May Mayday Parker, she'd actually end up falling in love with the descendant of a rival family, the Osborns. It's like a Romeo and Juliet love story. I mean, maybe the Osbornes also isn't a rival family, but they're at least a complicated family in regards to their relation to the Parkers, truth be told. There were both good and awful memories there. Normie Osborne, Norman Osborn's grandson and Harry Osborn's son, became May's friend and ally after she saw the tragedy in him when he was Green Goblin and actually helped to reform him. He would end up married to another reformed villain and ally, Brenda Drago, the daughter of the second Vulture. However, before that came to pass, May revealed that she had feelings for Normie. Although he rejected her, citing their 4-year age difference and the fact that her father would freak as reasons, it was later revealed that Normie actually did have feelings for May, when we saw into his comatose visions, where Normie was haunted by his grandfather, Norman Osborne, who hounded him for falling in love with the girl. Also, Normie did really like May, but they couldn't be together. It wasn't meant to be. Number 3. Hawkeye. Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman and Clint Barton's Hawkeye ended up getting together as a result of their time on the Avengers. They both developed feelings for one another and decided to start dating. However, due to some misinterpretation of the boundaries of that relationship, the two ended up calling it quits. Clint thought that he and Jess were keeping things casual, and he ended up having a one-night stand with somebody else outside of the relationship, which Jessica was not happy about when she found out, because she thought things were more serious between them and more monogamous. It also ended on a not so great note, as Jess, upset and hurt, lashed out by physically hitting Clint. Also, let's remember that Jess does have super strength, though I'm sure she wasn't using it there, but still, that makes this moment like even more worse in my mind. Both Clint and Jess made mistakes when it came to the whole situation between them, but fortunately, they were eventually able to move on and become friends again, though awkward moments still arise between the two as a result of this relationship. Number 2. Spider-Man. Obviously, we are once again switching up Spider-Womans for a moment. Although Gwen Stacy of Verse 65 is now known as Ghost Spider, there was a time when she too went by Spider-Woman. She has been known as Spider-Gwen most prominently from a reader's standpoint, but within the narrative, Spider-Woman and Ghost Spider are more common names for that character. This alternate version of 616's Gwen Stacy ends up falling in love with a different Spider-Man other than Peter Parker. She is more known for her relationship with and love of Earth 1610's Miles Morales, aka Spider-Man. In fact, there is even an alternate future where these two end up together, settle down, and they have kids. In that reality, they are both heroes and also kind of celebrities because of their heroics. Number 1. Porcupine. Roger Gawking is a fan favorite when it comes to Jessica Drew's romances. He was once the villain Porcupine, who ended up becoming involved in a case that Jessica was investigating as a PI. The spouses, paramours, and villains had been kidnapped and were being kept safe in exchange for ransom money that the villains were forced to pay. When Jessica went to investigate, she found a community of villains' loved ones who were essentially pretending they had been kidnapped in exchange for money, as many of them were victims of abuse at the hands of said villains. In the end, Jessica helped to resolve this conflict while still protecting the community of victims. Roger would go on to become an ally and friend to Jess, and also act as her babysitter after her son Jerry was born. Eventually, it would be revealed that Roger had feelings for Jess, and after believing he'd been killed only to find out he'd actually survived, the two shared a kiss, with Jess confirming that she also had feelings for Roger. More recently in the comics, Jess's busy heroic life, as well as her inability to see Roger as her equal, caused the two of them to break things off. Or more specifically, Roger to dump Jessica. I gotta say though, I kinda get it. I feel like Jessica did not have a lot of time for Roger. Poor Roger. Hopefully they can get back together, maybe, again, maybe? I'm not caught up with my Spider-Woman right now, so if they're back together, please don't tell me. I don't want any spoilers. A few issues behind, friends. Number 10. Captain Marvel. I can't deny, I actually kinda like this ship, but it still feels pretty out of left field, especially if you're more of a cinematic Marvel fan, and that's where a lot of your knowledge comes from. And even if you're not, while there has been quite a bit of flirting between the two in the comics, I would have never expected either hero to actually act on those flirtations and possible feelings. Anyways, Carol basically had a bit of a crush on Spidey, which has come up multiple times in the past, and both were close friends due to their time working side by side on the Avengers. While Carol herself tends to be a bit more serious and Peter is a bit more silly, the two have some pretty adorable interactions, and they also have a lot of strong mutual respect, which is what it's all about when it comes to romance, baby. They went on a date back when Carol was still operating under her Miss Marvel Marvel mantle, but her crush has also come up a few times since then. Spider-Man bartered to get that initial date with her in exchange for basically his superhero help. The date was awkward, but it ended on a not so bad note when both heroes kinda realized they were just working way too hard to impress the other person, instead of just being themselves. Which is also what romance should be all about, just being yourselves. Also, I like that I did this when I was talking about people having mutual respect. Like, this is fighting. I don't know why I did this, but you know, mutual respect. So we did see them go on that one date, however, we have not seen them date since. Even though it went pretty well by the end of it. Number 9. Deadpool. Okay, so this one isn't an official romance, more of a bromance, but it's shipped enough by people that we could consider it a fan-based pseudo-romance, which, yeah, is a thing I just made up now, so that's a thing now. Fan-based pseudo-romances. That's a term. Basically, Deadpool is borderline in love and obsessed with Spider-Man. It's pretty one-sided for the most part, but the two do have their moments, and there are times when Deadpool even inspires Spider-Man, or at least makes Peter consider Deadpool's maybe not as terrible and as annoying as he originally thought. The two have helped each other out multiple times and even have a whole team-up series together, and it lasted 3 years. It's pretty bromantic.
Up next, number 6, Betty Brant. Betty Brant is a civilian character that Peter has dated in the past. She first appeared in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 4 in 1963, dated Peter briefly, but then would go on to date Flash Thompson. But once upon a time, in What If Volume 1 issue 17, she was actually a superhero, appearing in the story What If the Radioactive Spider Had Bitten Someone Else. As you can imagine, in this hypothetical tale, Peter was not bitten by the radioactive spider, but Betty was, giving her his powers. She confides in the civilian Peter, and he begins to assist her, essentially acting as a sidekick of sorts to her Spider-Woman, or rather, the Amazing Spider-Girl as she preferred to be called. And at one point she fails to stop a criminal from escaping, which leads to the death of Peter's Uncle Ben. Now because of this, she gives up fighting crime altogether, but Peter still goes on to become Spider-Man, with synthetic powers of course. Moving on to number 5, Marrow. Mutant Marrow and Spider-Man had a brief entanglement after Marrow was brainwashed to be a sleeper agent for S.H.I.E.L.D. Operating under the alias Sarah Rushman, which, fun fact, was a previous alias of Black Widow's, she had a bit of a split personality, in which Marrow would terminate life model decoys, and then Sarah was a college kid at Empire State University. That's where she developed a crush on Peter, who was lecturing there, and the two ended up going out on a few dates before he realized who she truly was. Eventually that would dissipate, with Parker helping her break free from S.H.I.E.L.D.'s control by faking her own suicide in a Spider-Man Marrow one-shot crossover from 2001.
Number 3, Spider-Woman. While this isn't an official thing that has happened as of yet, we have gotten quite a few flirty moments between Spider-Man and Jessica Drew from Brian Michael Bendis' run on The Avengers. They weren't full-on shipped, but there was definitely some suggestive light shipping happening there. At one point when they are teamed up, Jessica even scans Spider-Man to make sure he's not a Skrull, just because she finds him to be so strange. His response was to ask if they were on a date. I guess he's just used to women calling him weird on dates. Which kind of makes sense, because Peter Parker is pretty awkward and weird. Fair enough. Number 2, Silk. One of the strangest romances that Peter has ever had is with another one of the Spider folks, Silk, Cindy Moon. Apparently they were both bit by the same radioactive spider, which is why they believe they are so irresistibly infatuated with one another. Either that or they just are inexplicably attracted to each other. The whole fact that they don't seem to have control of their physical urge to be together makes this relationship one of the weirdest that Peter has ever had, and kind of one of the most uncomfortable in my opinion, especially as even when they're in danger they just feel the urge to just get physical instead of, dealing with the problem at hand. Like, their attraction to one another not only seems to be completely uncontrollable, but it can also potentially endanger innocent lives, or their own lives even. Number 1, Marrow. Yep, probably one of the weirdest relationships that's happened out there for Peter Parker. There was a random time that he briefly dated Marrow. Why? Well, I don't know, cause comics. These two dated very briefly and even had a team-up one-shot titled Spider-Man Marrow in the early 2000s, which delved into their brief relationship and Marrow's change in personality. Their relationship ended after Marrow realized she wasn't really herself, as she was being brainwashed and used by S.H.I.E.L.D. to hunt down life model decoys. After she regained her memories, she escaped S.H.I.E.L.D., but the two ultimately broke up because she hadn't quite been herself basically throughout their relationship, so that'll do it. Oh, also she was a student at ESU where Peter was guest lecturing as a grad student, and Sarah refers to him multiple times in this issue as Mr. Parker, which I cannot deny I found quite a bit creepy. If you're calling your partner Mr. something, I don't know about that.
Starting us off in at number 10, Carol Danvers. No one really wanted Peter Parker and Carol Danvers to be a thing, but that's still what we got. And in Ms. Marvel Volume 2, issue 34, Peter asks Carol out, which she said yes to since he had helped her when she was depowered. Tad forceful of him. Then in issue 47 of her solo series, the two of them actually went out on a date at an upscale restaurant, and it is pretty painful to watch, until the date is interrupted by supervillains, thank god. The pair take them out, then end up eating chili dogs on a roof that overlooks the city. Later, it would continue to get weird between the two of them when they teamed up to fight Mac Gargan's Venom. But quite frankly, we're really glad this relationship never really hit the ground running. It's definitely one we can do without. In at number 9, Spider-Gwen. Okay, so I know we said we wouldn't be talking about alternates of Gwen Stacy with Peter Parker, but this alternate of Gwen had her sights set on a different man in the Spider-Man mantle. We're talking Miles Morales. Spider-Gwen is the Gwen Stacy aka Spider-Woman of Earth 65. Now under the Marvel Now line, she and Miles would get romantically involved with one another. And side note, their Earth 8 alternates even got married. They starred in a story titled Sitting in a Tree, in which their two titles crossed over and made for a story that had our hearts pitter-pattering all the way through. I mean, how could you not ship them? They're so cute together. I mean, unless you're actually one of those people who shipped Miles and Kamala Khan, in which case I am very sorry for your loss. Up next, number 8, Rogue. In the world of X-Men Forever, which takes place on Earth 161, we got to see a romance blossom between Spider-Man and Rogue. This Rogue had absorbed Nightcrawler's powers, which also changed her to look a lot more like him physically, which did not bode well with her. After that went down, she found herself crossing paths with Spider-Man after dealing with a robbery in New York. Feeling a little lost, she decided to spend the night with him, accompanying him on his patrol, which led to sparks between the two. They actually almost kissed, and would've if it wasn't for being interrupted by the screams of a nearby Jean Grey. In at 7, Carlie Cooper. Carlie Cooper is another exception on our list. She first appeared in the 2008 Amazing Spider-Man issue 545. She's a forensic specialist who ended up dating Peter after he and MJ broke up after the One More Day story event. Now the two of them had a bit of a slow burn flirtation before they finally went out on a date together. Eventually though, she would figure out that Peter was Spider-Man, and growing tired of his lies to her, she broke up with him. While she wasn't a superhero when they were dating, she would eventually become a villain briefly, operating under the name of Monster, gaining powers from the Goblin formula that gave her superhuman strength, speed, and stamina. Up next, number 6, Betty Brant. Betty Brant is a civilian character that Peter has dated in the past. She first appeared in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 4 in 1963, dated Peter briefly, but then would go on to date Flash Thompson. But once upon a time, in What If Volume 1 issue 17, she was actually a superhero, appearing in the story What If the Radioactive Spider Had Bitten Someone Else. As you can imagine, in this hypothetical tale, Peter was not bitten by the radioactive spider, but Betty was, giving her his powers. She confides in the civilian Peter, and he begins to assist her, essentially acting as a sidekick of sorts to her Spider-Woman, or rather, the Amazing Spider-Girl as she preferred to be called. And at one point she fails to stop a criminal from escaping, which leads to the death of Peter's Uncle Ben. Now because of this, she gives up fighting crime altogether, but Peter still goes on to become Spider-Man, with synthetic powers of course. Moving on to number 5, Marrow. Mutant Marrow and Spider-Man had a brief entanglement after Marrow was brainwashed to be a sleeper agent for S.H.I.E.L.D. Operating under the alias Sarah Rushman, which fun fact was a previous alias of Black Widows, she had a bit of a split personality, in which Marrow would terminate life model decoys, and then Sarah was a college kid at Empire State University. That's where she developed a crush on Peter, who was lecturing there, and the two ended up going out on a few dates before he realized who she truly was. Eventually that would dissipate, with Parker helping her break free from S.H.I.E.L.D.'s control by faking her own suicide in a Spider-Man Marrow one-shot crossover from 2001. Up next at 4, Silk. Silk, aka Cindy Moon, first hit the scene in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 1 volume 3. The character was bitten by the same radioactive spider as Peter was, but from there on out suffered a different kind of tragic origin story than what Parker had endured. She was kidnapped and forced to train inside of a bunker, where she was held captive by a mysterious man named Ezekiel in an attempt to hide her from Morlun, who was killing off spider-powered peeps. Eventually Peter learned of her existence, and when she was free, the two couldn't help but notice that they were super attracted to one another, unnaturally so. It was intense. Turns out it was actually a product of their pheromones, with the two of them overcome by primal urges to jump each other's bones. They eventually had to part ways because these urges were just too strong and too overwhelming, hindering their efforts to fight crime and just exist. Cindy would go on to begin her own costume superhero career separate of Peter. In at number 3, Kitty Pryde. Peter's relationship with Kitty Pryde isn't one that took place in the 616 universe, but rather on Earth 1610 in the Ultimate Universe. During Ultimate Comics Spider-Man, Kitty develops a crush on Peter when Spider-Man and the X-Men team up in Queens to take down the Latverian mutant Geldof. After being charmed by the web-slinger, Kitty asked him out on a date. Over the course of their relationship, they would work together to take on villains, and eventually Peter started to feel some tension about the fact that Kitty's X-Men persona was way more public versus the secret identity that he had been striving to maintain. Eventually though, the two break up, which did not go smoothly. But luckily over time they made amends, with them even becoming good friends after the fact. And at number 2, Silver Sable. A sometimes antagonist, sometimes ally of Spider-Man's, Silver Sable, who was introduced in 1985's The Amazing Spider-Man issue 265, has never hooked up romantically with Peter in the 616, but there's certainly been lots of tension and flirtation to say the least. But we did get to see a glimpse of what that underlying sexual tension could amount to in What If Volume 2 issue 21, which was titled What If Spider-Man Had Married the Black Cat. Now in this story, Black Cat is accidentally murdered by Paladin, and Spider-Man ends up getting romantically involved with Silver Sable in the aftermath. They both bond over the grief they share of their dead loved ones. By the end, it is a bit ambiguous as to whether or not their relationship worked out in the long run. And last but not least, speaking of, we have Black Cat at number 1. Black Cat, aka Felicia Hardy, may have originally been a villain of Spider-Man's, now an anti-hero, but if anything, her criminality made the romantic relationship between her and Peter Parker that much more steamier. Created by Marv Wolfman and Keith Pollard in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 194, Felicia actually chose to become more of an anti-hero because of her relationship with Spider-Man, even becoming his partner for a while. Although she didn't care much for Peter Parker the civilian, she was way more into Spider-Man the vigilante, and one of the reasons why the two would split up was because of this. Now they've had an on-again, off-again relationship over the years, with Black Cat working as one of Spidey's biggest allies at their best, and her slipping back into the life of a criminal when they've been at their worst. Although that relationship between the two of them may have been tipped permanently into negative land, thanks to Otto Octavius running around in Peter's body as the superior Spider-Man, having broken Black Cat's teeth and abandoned her for the police to pick up. Definitely something that would make someone not want to be into you. Just saying.
Number 10, Cosmic Baby, or Uni Baby, or Uni Power Baby, or just May Parker if you want. Because you know, all of Peter and MJ's babies have to either be a May or a Ben. Mary Jane's family, I guess, is just so much of a disappointment that she does not feel inclined to name babies after them. I mean, her family life was pretty wild, so like I kinda understand why she's just cool naming kids after Peter's aunt and uncle, but MJ also had a pretty cool aunt, Aunt Anna, so I feel like there should actually be more multiversal kids named after her too. Anyways, the reason why I'm focusing so much on the name here is because we don't actually know much more than that when it comes to this baby. Baby May hails from a what-if story where Peter keeps the Unipower instead of giving it up, or the Enigma Force if you will. Even in this story though, he does eventually give it up, he just keeps it a lot longer. It's also implied that because he had it so long, it gets passed on to his and MJ's baby daughter, May Parker. So even though she isn't there yet, this alternate baby has some of the greatest potential when it comes to power levels. Number 9, Benji. Benji is the little brother of May Parker and the youngest child of the Parker family in the MC2 universe of Earth 982. Benji actually began to display powers at a very young age, and as such was basically a superpowered little baby. Ben would become bonded to the Carnage symbiote when he was still a little tyke, but fortunately his sister May Parker saved him using a sonic weapon to separate him from the Carnage symbiote. Unfortunately, this also caused damage to Ben's very sensitive baby ears, which left him deaf for a time. I actually think that that whole element of this story was really interesting, and I think it would have been cool to see Benji grow up deaf and even still become a superhero like his sister and his dad before him. However, he would later have his hearing restored by May's good friend Normie Osborne, the grandson of Green Goblin and son of Harry Osborne and Liz Allen Osborne. Benji has displayed spider-like abilities including wall crawling, spider sense, and even the rare ability to generate organic webbing. And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you are loving this list and you are loving the channel, be sure to head on over to Facebook to show your support for us over there. Number 8, Claire Parker. Claire Parker is the daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane Parker, who hails from the reality belonging to Spider-Man life story, known as Earth 19529. Here, Claire proves to be strong enough to defeat Morlun when he returns and begins to hunt down Peter and his family, killing her own Uncle Ben Riley. Peter attempted to lure Morlun away from his kids, but was unsuccessful successful, and it came down to Claire and her brother Benji to defeat Morlun, which of course they did. Claire would go on to become a superhero in the next generation of heroes following her dad's time and era. Number 7. Spider-Boy. Spider-Boy hails from Earth 8, where Gwen Stacy and Miles Morales end up together. They have 2 children as a couple, and Max of course is one of them. Max's power is similar to his parents but does not possess any spider sense capabilities. He took up the name Spider-Boy when he joined up with the Amazing 8, a team of multiversal spider-like heroes. Max isn't alone on the team, which not only features characters outside of his universe, but also includes both his mom and his dad, Gwen and Miles of Earth 8, and of course his sister. Number 6. Spider-Girl. Spider-Girl is also the daughter of Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy on Earth 8. Her name is Charlotte, and she is also of course the sister of Maximilian Max Morales Stacy. While Max does not possess spider sense, Spider-Girl does, as well as a myriad of other spider-like abilities similar to her parents. Spider-Girl, along with her brother and the rest of her family, is also a member of the Amazing 8 team. The Watchers are wary of her and her brother as they fear the siblings' multiversal adventures pose a great risk to the timeline, which honestly, fair enough. Multiversal shenanigans I feel like are always posing great risks to the timeline. Number 5. Jerry Drew. Coming in with the zappies, it's baby Jerry. Jerry is actually the son of Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman, not Spider-Man, but still, Jessica is considered to be a Spider-Man alternate, despite being one of the most separated characters from Spider-Man in terms of her origin. In fact, canonically, in the world of 616, you could even say that Spider-Man would be considered an alternate of her. While Spider-Man first appeared in the 60s in the comics, canonically, Jessica is older than Peter and would therefore have gotten powers kind of before him. Although a main difference is that Jessica spent much of her childhood in a tube, removed from the world, and even after that was kind of like a secret agent of Hydra's for a time, before managing to escape her role working for them and becoming a hero and a PI. Jerry is her first and currently only son, and while he's still a little baby, he has already started to exhibit powers similar to Jessica, including his own baby-sized venom blasts, super strength and agility, and the ability to wall crawl. So a lot of potential for Jerry to follow in his mom's footsteps and possibly become even more skilled and powerful than she is. Number 4. May Parker. May Parker is of course another alternate reality version of Peter and MJ's daughter. As I said, the name May really does stick for them across the multiverse when it comes to their kids. This version of May comes from the Dark Ages reality, which isn't officially numbered yet, but does have a temporary number of Earth 891 for now. May in this reality is only a little kid when her powers first manifest. She has powers similar to her MC2 counterpart and of course similar to Peter's, including his famed spider sense. We get to watch May grow up somewhat in this reality, and she develops a close friendship with Danny Cage, the daughter of heroes Jessica Jones and Luke Cage. Although in that reality I believe Jessica is now she's Jessica Cage, because I mean they're married, but yeah. If I say Jessica Cage, I feel like people are gonna be like, who's Jessica Cage? Because we all know her as Jessica Jones still. Number 3. Venom. Venom is the daughter of Peter and Mary Jane, who hails from the reality of Earth X, aka Earth 9997. Eventually, May Parker ends up bonded to the Venom symbiote in this reality. Its origins are a little different as it was created, like many other things in this reality, by the Celestials. They created symbiotes to protect the embryos that they had stored within planets. So yeah, a bit different. However, despite their origins not being quite the same, the Venom symbiote here still has similar powers and abilities, and even a similar appearance somewhat to their 616 counterpart. Although they tend to be more black and red, and the Venom symbiote tends to be more white and black. In the Earth X reality, at some point after the death of May's mother, MJ, the Venom symbiote left Eddie Brock and bonded with May Parker, who also was trained by her uncle, Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil. Pretty cool stuff. Not only does she have her Venom symbiote and spider-like powers inherited from her dad, but she also has fighting skills passed down from DD, which is pretty cool. Number 2. Mayday. While little uni-powered baby May might have some of the greatest potential, when it comes to actual feats of strength and powers that we've seen on display, Mayday probably takes the cake, just because she is one of the kids we've seen the most of. She is the daughter of Peter Parker and his wife Mary Jane Watson Parker from the MC2 reality. May Parker grows up to inherit her dad's powers in this reality, meaning that she too can wall crawl, has the proportional strength of a spider, possesses spider sense, and is extremely agile. In fact, while it's believed that May isn't as strong as her dad, she is believed to be even more agile and dexterous than him. So when it comes to her sense of balance and nimbleness, she actually beats Peter in this one regard. Number 1. Spiderling. Spiderling is Anna May Parker, nicknamed Annie, who comes from the Renew Your Vows universe, which became so popular that it got its own spin-off series as well as its own piece of patchwork reality in God Emperor Doom's Battleworld Tapestry that was showcased during Secret Wars. Confirmed! God Emperor Doom is a shipper of Peter and MJ and thinks that they should have stayed married. We've confirmed it. He's like, I'm here for Renew Your Vows. That can be in my battle world. Annie, like her father, developed spider-like powers and abilities. And while we've seen the most of Mayday and she is likely the most popular of the alternate reality kids, I'd even suggest that Annie is more powerful as she has a more specific version of spider sense that basically allows her to see what potential danger is actually setting it off, giving her a sort of future sense, if you will, making her kind of a precog. Aside from that, she has not just her dad to guide her in heroics, but her mom as well, as in this universe, Mary Jane has powers of her own, taking up the superhero name of Spinneret. Mary Jane in this reality even at one point bonds with the Venom symbiote. Pretty crazy, especially considering MJ616's history with Venom. Also, guess what? I'm pretty sure Anna May is actually, one of the kids is actually named after MJ's Aunt Anna. So this is both aunt names combined, which I think is fair because both Aunt Anna and Aunt May are cool people. Number 10. Ben Parker. Ben and May, by the way, are going to be names you'll get familiar with on this list. So to start off with each point, I'm going to try to clarify just which Ben and which May we're talking about. This Ben is from the Spider-Man Limited series written by J.J. Abrams and his son Henry. It's known as the 2019 Just Spider-Man series or Spider-Man Volume 3. Here Ben was a young boy when his mother Mary Jane Watson was murdered by the villain known as Cadaverous. His father Peter, distraught, retired as Spider-Man and abandoned his son, leaving him to be raised by what should be a super elderly Aunt May at this point. Aunt May raised Ben as she had Peter and eventually gave him his father's costume, which he then wore to impress his classmate Faye Ito, or Ito Faye, depending on how you want to say it, Japanese way or American way. But when Cadaverous resurfaced, Ben also wore this suit to fight against him, possessing the same powers as his dad. Number 9. May Parker. This May Parker comes to us from Universe X, from the reality of Earth 1122. She first appeared in Universe X issue X. Yep, weird lettered issue. I don't like that. Her past is similar to that of another alternate daughter of Spidey's, but with one possible difference. It's implied that she is actually the daughter of clone Ben Reilly and not Peter himself. Her mother is Mary Jane, however, implying that Ben and MJ maybe had a thing, maybe while she was with Peter. We don't really know. She has similar powers to that of Spider-Man and ends up joining X-51 superhero team composed of different heroes from alternate realities known as the Heralds. You can check out the Heralds team in the Paradise X Herald series. Number 8. Spider-Woman. Ashley Barton is technically Spider-Man's granddaughter, but is still a grandchild of his, so still a child of Spider-Man. See what I did? And she is super cool, so I had to include her. She made her first appearance in 2003's Wolverine series issue 67 and comes to us from the Old Man Logan universe of Earth 807128. She is the daughter of Peter Parker's youngest daughter, Tonya, and Hawkeye. Yeah, try not to focus too much on the potential age difference there. Feels a little wince-inducing. Ashley attempted to take over Hammer Falls and usurp Kingpin's rule there, but she was captured. Old Man Hawkeye later rescued her, only for her to try and kill him, surprisingly. She appears to have powers similar to those of Spider-Man. It's kind of a weird point to finish it on, but whatever, Amanda, that's what you wrote. Number 7. Richie Parker. Richie Parker comes to us from the House of M reality. We've seen 2 different versions of him from different realities, and it's implied that Richard Parker II would grow up to exhibit superpowers similar to his father's, potentially even being able to produce organic webbing in addition to Peter's usual power set. Rather than being the son of Mary Jane and Peter, Richie is the son of Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker. There is a version of him with powers in What If Spider-Man House of M issue number 1, and a little baby version of him in the series Spider-Man House of M. Number 6. Venom. This May Parker comes to us from the reality of Earth 9997. That would be the universe of Earth X. She first appeared in 1999's Earth X series in issue number 1. She is also the daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane, like so many of these kids. However, her mother died of cancer when she was younger. Her powers manifested when she was just a teen and are similar to her father's. But May also has the powers granted to her by the alien symbiote known as Venom, whom she is bonded to. Initially, the Venom symbiote sought her out after leaving an elderly Eddie Brock, hoping to continue its vengeful pursuits against May's father and turn her against him. May's willpower and spider sense proved too powerful for the symbiote though, and so its plan did not work. Instead, she bent the being to her will and used the symbiote for her own heroic means. But she still goes by the name Venom, which you like. Number 5. Benji Parker. Benji is one of Peter's children with Mary Jane from the reality of Earth 19529. He first appeared in Spider-Man Life Story issue number 3 and was created by Chip Zdarsky and Mark Bagley. In this reality, Mary Jane gave birth to twins and left Peter shortly after they were born, not being able to deal with the fact that Peter led 2 lives, one as Peter Parker and one as the hero Spider-Man. Benji was likely mostly estranged from his father for a good amount of his childhood, as Mary Jane took her children with her when she left Peter and raised them near Portland, Oregon. But Benji would reconnect with his dad when he was 11. Number 4. Claire Parker. Claire is the twin sister to Benji. She also first appeared in Spider-Man Life Story issue number 3. Later on in their lives, her family would be tormented by the villain known as Morlun, who killed their Uncle Ben shortly after Claire had returned home after finishing college. Peter hoped to lure Morlun away from his family by returning to New York, but instead Morlun chose this opportunity to strike on Peter's kids. He attempted to devour Claire's life energy, but she managed to fend him off by attacking him while he fed. Benji came up with a theory that Morlun was actually more vulnerable to being attacked while feeding, and came up with a plan to use himself as bait so that Claire could defeat him. This plan actually worked, but it also left Benji permanently injured, causing him to have to walk with a cane for the rest of his life. Number 3. Spiderling. Anna May Annie Parker is from the Earth of 18119. She made her first appearance in 2015's Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows issue number 1. Her Earth was revealed to be one of the alternates condensed and weirdly preserved in God Emperor Doom's battle world following the incursions. The reality was transformed into the domain known as the Regency. In this alternate reality, Annie was the daughter of Mary Jane and Peter and developed spider-like abilities similar to her father's. Her spider sense also grants her a kind of future vision, and as such is considered more involved and more powerful than Peter's. Number 2. Little Benjamin Benji Parker. This Ben Parker, fondly referred to by his sister as Benji, first appeared in 1998's Spider-Girl in issue 59. You know what that means? He is the little brother of Mayday Parker. Benji showed signs of powers very early on. He bonded with the Carnage symbiote when he was just a little toddler, and May had to use sonic waves to separate the symbiote from him. Because he was so small, his eardrums actually burst, giving him hearing loss and making him deaf, which May felt awful about and super responsible for. Even without his hearing though, Benji was still a perfectly happy little boy. He would later recover his hearing, but after bonding with the symbiote, it was believed that the experience may have altered Benji's physiology somehow. His powers began to surface shortly afterward, leaving him crawling on ceilings and walls and manifesting and using his own super strong organic webbing. It's believed Benji could even grow up become a more powerful hero than both his sister and his father. Number 1. Mayday Parker. May Parker, aka Spider-Girl, aka Spider-Woman, is one of the most famous of Spider-Man's kids. She is from the alternate reality of Earth 982 and first appeared in the 1989 What If series in issue 105. The story she was featured in sought to answer the question, what if Mary Jane had never lost the baby and Spider-Man had a Spider-Girl? People loved Mayday so much that she would later get her own series, Spider-Girl, which would have a 100-issue run. Pretty impressive. Like her little brother, she is of course the daughter of Mary Jane and Peter. She shares her father's abilities, but she isn't quite as physically strong as he is. However, she does have enhanced agility and spider sense, which more than makes up for that slight difference in strength.